I am Sarah Orrell. I am a village trustee in the village of Roslyn. I'm also in traffic, transportation, and urban planner and Cameron engineering. So I know about these issues from all different sides. And we're going to hear today from some very successful downtowns. I mean, I can tell you personally the issues that come. You work very hard to bring people to your downtowns, but what do you do once they're there? What do you do when you're dealing with parking? What do you do with safety? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. You know what, for saving time, I'm just going to start at the end and have everybody do a quick introduction of themselves and just start speaking. And I'm going to keep you to 5 minutes for initial, just because we're on such a tight schedule, and then we'll open up to the public. So Brian, why don't you take it away?
Hi, I'm Brian Hardy, the Village of Farmingdale, and the administrator there. And we've gone through a renaissance over the last 8 or 9 years, and we've had hundreds of millions of dollars literally in investment in the village. And I see our good colleagues here from National Grid. They're putting a new gas main down our Main Street, which we're thrilled about, because it's going to make a big difference in infrastructure improvements in downtown. But the things about when we first got there, I got there 10 years ago, and the village was virtually empty. Main Street was in horrible shape, and the storefronts were in terrible condition. So one of the first things that was done was Tom Savino. Tom, where are you? Tom was our key consultant on that, of doing downtown revitalization. And he was very successful in getting grants through the County of Nassau, and we turned it into what we call the Sign, Light, and Awning program. And where the federal government pays 80% of the signs, lights, and awnings going in. And we decided to do that rather than doing complete storefront renovations, because we really believed, and it turned out this way, that those grants would stimulate people going in and doing renovations on their storefronts when they saw new signs and new lights and new awnings coming in and making those changes. We also did some changes on the sidewalk. The sidewalk was in horrible condition, so as part of the grant program we did a new sidewalk as well. So you made it a little bit more welcoming at the one time, and then you put in these new signs, light, and awnings, and it stimulated an awful lot of investment. The biggest part of it, though, was when we had transit-oriented development by the train station, and we had 2 major projects approved. Then the investment started coming into the Main Street corridor, but without the stimulus of and this is federal money coming through the county, a CDBG program. Without that stimulus, the Main Street would have developed a lot more slowly, without question. But the big stimulus was for investment for people coming in and looking at empty stores and rehabilitating storefronts, was when they saw the critical mass of the new development that was coming into town. So when I first got there, it was virtually empty at night. You didn't have a heck of a lot to do, and we were ticketing. When I first got there, they were writing tickets in the parking lots till 9 o'clock at night with 10 cars in the parking lot. I said that stops immediately. We don't ticket after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So ticketing and traffic management and parking management is a key component to this. One of my colleagues here from Port Jeff, Kevin, what are we talking about parking, I'm sure, in the future. But when I got there, I said one of the things I want is a parking problem, because then I know we're successful. And I know we've done something right when you have a parking issue, when you have a parking problem, that you have something that becomes a destination. We don't have a waterfront like Port Jeff. We have a train station, so the train station becomes the intermodal connection between the city and the income levels of the people living in those buildings, and that income level translates to investment on Main Street. So that's done very well. We do have some metered parking at the train station, but typically we charge for on an annual basis for residents and non-residents. And the residents pay $100 a year, the non-residents pay $400 a year, and it's now $5 a day to park at the metered parking. We are going to go to pay-by-phone metering as well as an option from a single pay-by. We had lollipop meters. We've now gone to a single pay-by-space meter at the train station. But we're also adding the component of a pay-by-phone, which people can actually add time from distant locations, so that if they're going to be late, they're not going to be there in time to pay for the next day. They get stuck in the city, they can do it on their phone and make the payment that way, and we'll get a ticket. So we're trying to be user-friendly as possible. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're going to enforce it correctly as well. But Main Street's booming. We have our key to security is we have our code enforcement people, but we don't look at our code enforcement people as a police department. We look at them as parking ambassadors on Friday and Saturday night. If people are hovering around, we have the train station parking, which is available, and we rebuilt sidewalks to get to the train station and relit it so that people would feel safe walking from the train station a couple of blocks down to Main Street. We're also connecting that with Quick Ride. So that, and many people have heard of Quick Ride, I'm sure you have, right? We're doing the things that other people have done. I think we were one of the first in Nassau County to engage it, but it's worked out somewhat successfully. We didn't have enough vehicles, we felt. We're going to augment that going forward, hopefully, and that'll make a big difference in moving people around. So it's been an interesting experience, and it continues on the same themes. Sign, lights, and awnings, parking issues, and the interrelationship with the police department for us is a critical one. We've an excellent relationship with the Nassau County PD. They are very responsive to us. We meet at least quarterly with them. We go over all the issues that are associated with that come up that we're aware of. And there's always something. Nothing major, but there's always something. So we try to keep the issues from a resident's perspective. If there's a lot of noise on Main Street, people live across the street, we're addressing that right now. Truthfully, we got one place that's booming woofers, and they're not supposed to do that. So we're bringing them to court. So we have these operational issues and success issues, let's call them that, because these businesses are looking forward to making money, and that's why we're there. Another part of the revitalization that's very, very important is going through the building department, and we approve projects very quickly. We don't belabor the issue. We have the zoning's in place, we want people to make investments, and we facilitate them through, and we've had things going as quickly as 90 days. We don't belabor them for a year, or 2 years, 3-year developments, that kind of thing. We look at it and say that this is something that fits the code, fits the zoning. Everybody complains there's too many restaurants down, there's too many bars and restaurants. That's the downtown nature of it, is they need cash flow to pay. They pay very high taxes in the commercial sectors in all of Nassau County, and to go along with it. So they need the cash flow to sustain it. And I think you'll see in Patchogue and other successful places, Rockville Center and so on, you'll see that there are very, very, the components of the downtown areas are based on largely around restaurants and entertainment. That's really what you're finding. So, and then having the downtown area rebuilt around that, where you have a customer base, is a very important component. So the cash flow keeps circulating around the village.
Thank you, Brian. And that's actually a great segue to Joe. Mineola, talk about having a base, having all those apartments. Why don't you let everybody know what's going on in Mineola?
Yeah, what he said. I have, my name is Joe Scalera. I have been with the Village of Mineola for about 14 years now. My biggest claim to fame is I know Brian. No, it's funny because
we've been friends a long time.
We have, and we've bounced ideas back and forth a lot over the years and commiserated on other things. But when I came to Mineola, it was just beginning under the former administration to look at the downtown problems that we have. I always say that you have to understand the history of something to know where you are now, where you want to go, and that's usually when I start rolling. Then eventually stick with me because people have that aha moment. But the suburbs have changed. Long Island really only became suburban in the 50s, and it's been on a growing trend ever since. And it wasn't until the 80s or 90s that people started saying we're out of space, or what do we do? Well, now you have for the first time older communities like Mineola that need to be brought into kicking and screaming into the next century, and that's what it is a lot of times. I always like to say Mineola is the type of place that has all the charm and quality of life of a small town with all the challenges of a small city. We have a major railroad, not that it was by design, it was the railroad's idea, but we have a major railroad, including 2 lines. We have a major hospital. We have a major,
3 lines to the railroad there.
What's the third one?
Oyster Bay, Ronkonkoma.
No, there's 2 lines, the main line and the West Coast. It's not quibble. I can tell you, if you want to talk about the problems that all those trains cause, and the fact that you can't drive north-south through town 4 hours out of the day, we can go into that. We have the railroad, we have a major hospital, and we have the county seat. So you have all the county properties and the traffic that is generated. Now, when I say traffic, I don't just mean vehicular traffic, although that's part of it. People. We have a population of about 19,000 people, 2002, I think was the last census. But we have a daytime population of closer to 40,000 because you have all your hospital employees, you have all your county employees, you have everybody that comes in to do business in Mineola. And that's where the biggest problem was when you talk about restaurants. I would love to have that problem. Because all those people, at the end of the day, when the sun goes down and their offices close at 5 or 6 o'clock or whatever it is, they leave and they go somewhere else. Now downtown would literally become a ghost town. So how do you develop a downtown that's not there at night, that only has half a day? And during the day, it's not your residents. These are all people who are visiting. So they made a conscious effort that the best way to do that is using smart growth, where you put housing in those areas where, let's face it again, the history of the suburbs. In 1950, 1960, nobody wanted to live downtown. There were a finite group of demographic that would want to live downtown. People didn't drive, people wanted to access their train. That hasn't changed. But generally, downtown was for shopping, and it was people way before people drove everywhere. I'm just old enough to remember a time when most homes only had one car, or 2 cars at most. It's not uncommon now to have a husband and wife driving, 3 adult kids. You have 5, 6, 7 cars in the house, and that creates the parking problem, challenges that we talked about. But downtown was for walking. People don't do that anymore. They drive to wherever they want to go to get to. People want what they want, and if they want to go to a store that's in Farmingdale, I'm going to drive there and go. In order to get people in your downtown at night, you need nighttime attractions, which are non-say corporate business, restaurants, theaters, entertainment, but you need people who live there. So what we've done is we're now building, currently building our 3rd, just completed one, we're still building the 3rd major apartment building. I can go on that different topic, but the first one that we did was supposed to be condos, for example, high-end condos, and the residents said, oh yeah, we'd rather have condos than apartments. Demographically, there's almost no difference, by the way, folks. But are there any builders or developers in the room? I wish there were, because they're the ones that really made the difference. There really is no difference in terms of demographics from who is going to buy those units or rent. And it was funny because it was the banks that controlled the process. The developers come back, none of them use their own money anymore. This is not like the old days of a president who put his own money into everything. They get financing, that's the way the world works. And they come in and the banks say, we don't like condos, we'll only loan you the money if you do rentals. That's what people want. And the developers say, okay, well, do rentals. The question was, do your residents support that? And anybody, I would challenge anybody in the village, at least, who hasn't heard from their residents, their school boards, their local gadflies or whatever, say, oh, apartments are terrible, they don't work. We don't want those in our community. It's the new NIMBYism. That's what it is. And yet, there's a lot of myths out there. We can go off at length later, but there are a lot more myths than reality when it comes to rental properties. They don't bring in low-income people. I couldn't afford to live in the ones that were built. The rents are starting at like $2,800 a month for a studio, and they go up to $5,000. No low-income person's living in a $5,000 a month unit. But you do have to mix affordable housing, which is a whole different component. Getting back to it, so as the suburbs have changed, we've had to grow with it. And for 30 years, Mineola literally had its head in the sand. They were so politically afraid of change that they stagnated, and that made it worse and worse and worse. And eventually, through the vision of the board at the time and the former mayor, said, if we're going to survive, we have to adapt. And he had a great expression, and I love saying this there. Change is inevitable. We live on Long Island, change is going to happen. The question is, does it happen on your term or somebody else's? So put change on your terms, and that's been our guiding motto. So we don't let wanton development come in our downtown. We have very precise, very carefully reviewed, smart growth, transit-oriented development projects that went in, and only in certain areas that fit. So we always say, for example, a project that we put in on Old Country Road, which is a major corridor, wouldn't, a 6-story apartment building wouldn't work north of Jericho Turnpike, which is all single-family homes. You're not going to drop that in the middle. And once people understood that, and they see that there's a rhyme and reason to it, they embraced it. And once you have your residents buy into this, there's almost no limit to what can be done. So the buy-in is a huge part of that. But it doesn't solve all the problems. We still have parking problems. We still have, there's growing pains right now. I was just saying on the way in, when I first spoke at one of these panels, it was probably about 7 years ago when we were just approving these projects. Now I'm in the part where they're all being built, and we're in the, what I like to say, the growing pains area, because I hate this expression, but to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs, and you're going to have road closures. You're going to have people unhappy about traffic patterns and noise and everything. It is temporary, but try telling them. Try saying to somebody, look, and by the way, this is a testament to modern building. What used to take 3 or 4 years to build is now being built in 18 months. And part of that comes from our approval process, which used to take 2.5 to 3 years, which can now be done in 6 to 8 months. So by moving everything faster, you lessen the pain for people. But tell somebody, hey, it's only going to be 18 months of this. They don't, out in their living. So
Thank you.
That growing pains is a very real part of any development.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry. Just we're gonna head over to Kevin now.
Don't worry, I'll make up for the time. Kevin Wood. My official title is Parking and Mobility Administrator in the charming village of Port Jefferson, which has a long and varied and very awesome history back in the 1600s. You might know that this weekend is the Dickens Festival in Port Jefferson. If you haven't been there, visit that. You'll see me in my regale as well. What can I say? I'm representing the mayor here really today, but I mean, we had 3 major apartments go up, one major apartment complex go up. It sold out pretty immediately. The great builders Tritech built the shipyard. I think that demographic has been high-end. I'm hearing probably Stony Brook professors, that type of thing, higher-end apartments, but I think it's been wonderful. Walkability to downtown, literally across the street, right next to that. The Overbay is now being built, and Gito, which is also a wonderful developer, is building the old Cappy's carpet as we speak. So we have 3 major. We're really going to change the complexion of Port Jefferson, I think very overwhelmingly positive. Day to day, I probably see more than anybody in the village in terms of what's really happening. We have a vibrant downtown. We need to start to do things uptown. We have a Long Island Railroad there, as you know, but it's not electrified. So we did our parking lot over called Texaco Avenue on the west side, and the Long Island Railroad did on the east side. So that's been wonderful. Now we'll talk about this later. Just waiting for some chess games there to happen to start our uptown. Parking, when people think of Port Jefferson, they think of parking, and what I like to call parking anxiety. And I think I administered the first concept of parking ambassadors, which were truly exemplary high school kids that I had hired. 4 of them per season, went around with a golf shirt and helped people to find places to park, to use the meter. Our app adoption rate since I've been there has gone from 1% to 16%, which is, if you don't know what that is, that just means the number of people using the phone to park rather than the meter, again, has risen from 1% to 16%, so I'm pretty proud of that. We think that everybody that I've talked to, and I've talked to thousands of people in parking lots, it's not what they're paying or when they're paying, it's just the ease of use, because it is challenging. We need more parking spots, and we're physically different than any other village here by far. We're really a 3-sided village. We have the water to that 4th side, and we go uphill to residential. It's just different, so we can talk about that. I think I made up for some time, 2.5 minutes. You're on camera.
Oh, great.
Okay,
I just wanted to have more time for all of it.
my name is Colleen Smith. I'm part of the Bethpage Farmingdale. I live in the Bethpage and Farmingdale Village, but I grew up in the Nassau County Police Department. My uncle was the chief of department. The commissioner was my next door neighbor. He lived in Farmingdale, Bethpage area. My father was a police officer. My father-in-law was a detective. I've worked for the county for 30 years. I've worked for county executives, congressmen, senators. So basically what I do is community outreach, how the public, the villages and the counties and the towns can better be heard by our elected officials, by our village representatives, whatever our needs are, whatever your needs are. For example, back in the 70s, my father, when he was on patrol in the village of Farmingdale, he used to walk the beat, as they say. He knew every store owner, he knew the deli guy, he knew the lady walking her dog. So we're trying to bring more community outreach to the public, so to let everyone know that the law enforcement is there. They're there to keep everybody safe, they're there to just to let you know that they're there, because people might think they might have disappeared. I mean, I grew up in the 70s where I know everyone, and again, my whole family was law enforcement, so everywhere I went, I knew, across the church, wherever they were. So we're trying to get law enforcement back out into the community. So that's why we're here. So if you guys have any questions or ideas or something you want me to bring back to the commissioner, we're trying to, every single town. We have meetings, we've met in Farmingdale, we meet in the villages, whether it's drug prevention or whatever it is, we do have meetings. We're trying to get more out into the communities in every town, every village, school districts, civics, chambers. We're trying to try to gather everybody together to let us know what we can do for everybody else to keep everybody safe. About the same.
Thank you, Colleen. Again, we're a little short on time, but it's time for you guys to start asking questions of everybody here on the panel. So does anybody have a question they'd like to ask?
I want to address a little bit of a safety issue, not just a traffic and parking issue. And I think specifically for Jeff, because that's where I spend a lot of time, about, the more people you bring in, is it safer, is it quieter? You don't want empty nighttime streets because that's a little daunting, but when there's a lot of activity, what's been happening?
Yeah, so I failed to mention, one of the things I also administer at the Village of Port Jefferson are the street cameras, PTZs as they're known, until Zoom. And I believe we were the first village to connect to the real-time crime center at the Suffolk County Police Headquarters. And that allows, a lot of people think that there's human beings watching cameras. And I heard that at one point that was on the agenda to do that, like almost cyber craziness, to try to watch a crime before it happens. That's not what really happens, even at the real-time crime center. What does happen, and a good example was just a couple of months ago when there was a bomb threat on the ferry, and the real-time crime center was able to take control of the cameras that I administer, zoom that camera in, and take an overview while the police were actually evacuating the ferry. So that was really, really fantastic. We had an unfortunate incident, I think 2 months ago, where we had a self-defense situation in a liquor store. Same situation where we were able to watch just in case something else happened from that point out in the street. So we have 10, and it's growing, 10 real-time cameras, high definition recording to the cloud all the time, which we can administer in the Suffolk County Police can. Our code department, to answer your question, it's really quality of life. They have a quality of life. Certainly parking tickets, which we are trying to temper to keep things cool down there, and that type of thing. Anything else crime-wise, the Suffolk County Police is called in. There are 2 sector cars in Port Jefferson. Any specific questions on the audience?
So I was glad to hear Colleen's comment. My name is Peter Rivera. I'm the CFO for Long Island Select Healthcare. We're a new company. We've just been around for 3 years. We have 8 locations. We go from Central Islip, we go all the way to Riverhead. So we provide healthcare services to the medical specialties, chronic care, telehealth, you name it, we do it all. And we are federally qualified health center, which means that we provide healthcare regardless of cost. And you can't manage you with that broke. We give you quality healthcare. We're partly funded by the feds. So I was glad to hear your comment about more police presence in the community. That's what you said, Colleen, right? So I live in upstate New York, and I commute down here because I love what I do. I used to work for Montefiore, but I really like the federal qualified health center movement. Our main location is in Central Islip, and as you know, there's issues in Central Islip. We've been for the longest trying to get a police presence there. So I would love to figure out how to get that done, so that we're not even asking for a full-time cop to be there, but certainly just to be a presence. We get thousands of patients traveling to us, right? And their caregivers and vendors, blah blah blah. And right next to it we have this big a lot. You know, there's nothing there, and there's homeless people there. You know, so I'm just wondering, in your dealings, Colleen, do you think that can happen truly at places like Central Islip?
Absolutely. I mean, when like I said earlier, comparing it to like in the 70s when my father was on patrol, it was a lot different then than it is now in the past 10, 20 years, whatever. But you'll find that most commissioners and law enforcement precincts are trying to get out to the public a lot more than they were, let's say, 15 years ago. So, if, again, when you're talking with your civics and chambers, like we've all been mentioning all morning, bring that up to your commissioner. Bring it up to your just go to your local precinct and just let them know that that's what we're looking for. I mean, if you have to speak, like Eric was saying this morning too. If you're not telling your local communities what you need and what you want, nobody's going to know. So just voice your opinion, say this is what we need, you know. And because we've been talking about this for years, we're beginning to see it a lot more.
Yes, two questions. My name's Jim McGoldrick. I'm from Huntington Station. I frequent all your towns, believe it or not. And now, don't get rid of Davenport. Many hours spent in there waiting for a train to come get me after it broke down. So don't get rid of that, whatever you do. With the cameras, sir, how much did those 10 cameras cost you? Huntington Station just received a grant for about $180,000. You know, it's going back and forth. But what did those 10 cameras cost you?
Roughly 30.
30,000 for 10? Thank you.
And again, like all technology, it keeps going down.
And that was actually, you call them point tilt zoom cameras?
PTZ.
Okay. Now another question is, does anybody have, like the gentleman down there was talking about the homes, Huntington Station, you're well aware of it, we have us pretty much the same issues. Does anybody have any loitering laws implemented in their communities? I know Port Jeff, a couple of years ago, I saw an article, I thought they were kicking around. Do you have like anti-loitering laws or anything like that?
They're very difficult to enforce.
I understand that
Very,
point,
very
but you
difficult to
do
enforce,
have...
almost impossible to enforce.
Yeah.
About loitering. People have constitutional rights to congregate pretty much where they want to do that, and it's a very, very difficult issue to address. That's really
So I will say this, and you probably know this. When the Long Island Railroad redid the parking lot, just as you get over the train tracks, there were several benches there. Those benches are no longer there. Okay, so forward think, you know, what that does is people still have needs, and hopefully those needs are being met, but it was kind of really out in the open because of the benches.
At the same time, you know, the social service aspects of it, you know, you try to point people, if they are having a rough time, to point them to medical facilities or social service agencies that may be able to help. You know, in Port Jeff, for example, I have some experience out there as well, that there are social service agencies right by the railroad stations that do take in people who are
Hope House is right
Hope
around
House
the
is
corner.
right there. So,
Right there.
so there are elements in the community that can help people that are having a rough time. So, you know, there is a law, I believe, in New York City. I don't know about Long Island, but I think if it gets under 20 degrees, if people can be taken in and automatically put into a shelter for their own safety. But it was a very contentious issue constitutionally, from what I understand about it, and that
Especially this time of year, you know, we already
yeah.
we had one poor individual already died of hypothermia
Yeah,
a
you
week
don't want
ago
that to happen. It's
already,
horrible,
you know.
and it's a very fine line between
Yeah, I understand.
constitutionality and constitutional rights and somebody's well-being.
Thank you.
And their right of self-determination.
Thank you.
This isn't a question as much as it is a comment. My name is Diana Hamtieri. I work for National Grid. My job is stakeholder engagement for gas pipeline safety. Part of what I do is reach out to the local chambers of commerce. I go to their meetings. I do a gas pipeline safety presentation. I go to schools and hospitals in the event of a gas emergency. People know how to react. They know what gas smells like. They know what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. So obviously it's a free service. We also offer online training for first responders to respond correctly to both a gas, electric, or solar panel emergency. So I'm just putting it out there.
Great,
Thank you.
We'll take you up on it.
Okay, good stuff.
Anybody on this side have any questions?
Yes, question. Both Farmingdale and Mineola, you both successfully implemented TOD, which helps drive the traffic to the downtown. I'm president of the Planum Heights Civic, which is part of the Greater Manhasset. And Planum Road, which is our downtown, is increasingly having empty storefronts. It's like everywhere you turn, there's 2 more than close. And TOD is not a well-accepted concept, in Manhasset. What are other things that you've done that you think have contributed to, they're looking at sewers. That's one of the problems with the restaurants, which will be able to bring in more restaurants.
For the build out, for the build out. So that's what Patchwork did. Paul Pontieri, the mayor out there, he got SOARs approved, and that was the infrastructure that was needed to bring on the development of all the restaurants in the downtown area over there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to do it. So that is a component that if you want to make that change, if they don't have the correct amount of sewer flow over there, it's kind of a lousy thing to talk about.
Cesspools in Manhasset. From years ago. All to stop development back in the 20s.
Well, and then you've got, you have nitrogen issues, you have people working out of that now, so how to hook up and put into effect a sewage treatment facility up there, or look into something that's already existing, may be necessary to encourage that.
What about any placemaking kind of things, road diets or streetscaping and that kind of stuff?
Sense of place is an important thing, and Tom Savino is an expert in this. I mean, he was instrumental in us getting.
You stop plugging him.
I know. He's also working with Mineola.
Yeah, right. Currently one of our consultants. I think his prices just went up.
Forget everything I said about it. But all kidding aside, it's to create the sense of place is important too. But, and you have to have a very, very aggressive building department in the township. I guess you know Hempstead.
Well, one of the problems we have in Manhasset is we have 5 villages, and then the unincorporated areas are part of town with Hempstead.
Right.
We've got 2 different council members representing Manhasset, so
sure,
civic
please do.
is
Jump in on that. And first, I want to set the record straight. So I was told to just come here and take some questions, and then on the way in, they said talk for 5 minutes. So if I ramble, I apologize. But because usually I get accused of being short or terse. But there's important considerations around it, especially when you're talking about storefronts. We hear it all the time. Oh, we got all these empty storefronts. Storefronts are private property. They're not owned by the village. And you can't regulate what goes in. You can only prevent things from going in. So, and I still remember this is a true story. When we got up at a hearing, we were talking about somebody who wanted to put in I forget what it was, a dance studio or something. They said, we don't need that. You know what we need downtown? We need an ice cream parlor. And the mayor at the time looked there and said, well, I agree, but I can't tell them they have to open an ice cream stand instead of a dance studio. That's not what they do. And the landlord is just trying to fill that space. So as long as they meet our zoning, you have to take what the market brings you. But the other part of that is an empty storefront is still generating taxes. Talk to anybody that owns one. People think that it looks bad visually. Well, you got empty stores downtown. There's nothing you can do as a village to put somebody in there. Things you can encourage. But you're not losing money either. That's not
from a civic standpoint.
No. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out as those are 2 things to keep in mind.
If I may, there are some things that you can do to bring more people downtown, and the more people you have downtown, the more likely you are to fill those storefronts. And a lot of that comes down to programming. So, we heard during the breakfast today about music events or street fairs and things of that nature. If you're having programming in your downtown area and the people who own those properties see that there's constant foot traffic in the area, they're going to be more willing to go out and find tenants for their empty spaces. So while you're in a unique position, you know that multifamily housing developments on a large scale are not going to happen there. You really need to concentrate on the programming side of things. Because if you build it, they will come, but really you need the people there to show the business owners that it's worth the investment, especially in a high real estate area. It's worth the investment to open something because there are people there who will come to my establishment. So that's a good way to look at it too.
On that note, there are studies out there, and if anybody wants to talk, I can point you there. Studies out there about walkability in downtowns, big selling point. Streetscaping is probably the biggest thing. People don't want to go down to a rundown. That's where those empty stores become problematic. Tom Savino, now I'm plugging him, but it's basically how to make your downtown more visually appealing. And if you look at, say, a Huntington that has a downtown where everything, all the stores match and the sun, storefronts hate it because they always want to stand out, but it actually brings more people in. So they make out better. But that downtown is, we keep hearing about the hip factor, especially with young people. But there's a certain truth that people want to get around and walk. So you need a walkability, you need plazas, you need events. The Port Jeff, I mean, they have
I think
Christmas cornered on that.
Yeah.
By the way, is that a job requirement to dress up? But,
Soon will be.
but they do, and all those things bring people in. Between like in our case, bringing people in who live there and will be there at nighttime. If they don't want to leave their houses though, they don't want to leave their homes. You got to give them a place to walk to, do stuff.
What I said to Brian before we even started here was that I think we're in an experiential economy. I think millennials are showing us that they're not just going to go to a restaurant and pay $12.95 for a hamburger. And we're just not in that world anymore. They want an experience. The new restaurant that will open next week in Port Jefferson is social meals, where you don't even know what's on the menu. You just say, I kind of like this kind of food, and this chef just throws a lot of food at you.
Yeah, we used to have that. It was called family dinner.
Right. But the mom's working, so that's not happening anymore. So the one thing I think Port Jeff does very well is it constantly does these events in all seasons, by the way, not just Dickens. Dickens stands out, but we do Harvest Fest, we do maritime festivals. And so that brings people downtown. Otherwise, I have to tell you, Port Jeff's not the easiest place to get to, from the expressway. If you think about it, you're going all the way north.
You have to want to get
there. So the more that we throw, the more that just goes back to the original question in terms of why does a person want to rent the space in Port Jefferson or any other town for that reason.
A couple of the other things we did, in Farmington, we were rebuilding all of the infrastructure in the downtown and the business district. All the parking lots are virtually all brand new, it's all being relit. We're going to be doing Main Street shortly, so you try to make it as welcoming and as safe as possible. We will be adding cameras going down the road. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for that. But but if you have strips along major roadways, and with retail typically on very, very busy streets, it's tough if you don't have a lot of parking behind it. Because if you have a limited amount of parking in front of it, you get those stores to be occupied and to sell stuff with the current tax rates and the structure of it all. It's a very difficult, it becomes problematic.
Have parking
Do they? Okay.
behind it.
That's a key. And
then
signage is also,
parking as well.
signage is also,
But at
signage
night
is also.
it's dead. We were in the city the other night, got home at 9:30, walking home because I'm walking distance from
Yeah.
the train station. It's dead.
Well, I
So,
mean, the nighttime businesses are going to be the restaurants and the bars, and again, this ties directly to the sewers, because without the infrastructure to support those wet uses, you're not going to be able to have those type of uses. Exactly.
The other thing you remember, too, I mean, we've had success in Mineola with things that we mentioned. We do the summer concert series, and we do broadcast. There's a lot of speculative stuff going on right now that you may not see. There are people who know that downtown is in a flux. It's going to change for the positive. They've already been buying properties. They've already been planning to open restaurants. There's 3 restaurants that haven't even opened, they don't even have a sign yet, but they're going to be there as soon as there's people to eat at. So that it happens. One of the things the biggest problem, I think this is universal across Long Island, is absentee landlords. You get people who own these downtown properties for 30, 40, 50 years. Some of them are in family trusts, some of them are real estate investments. And you can't make these people update their properties. You can't require them to change their storefronts. And the storefronts can sit empty for a year because they take it as a tax write-off to some.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What's the
So,
motivation for these landlords?
one of the best
to
things,
want
and
tax
again,
write-off?
and now I am going to plug Tom Savino, and again, it's nothing else. Because one of the best things you can do, and I hate to use the term shaming, but if you develop every property around one holdout, one absentee landlord, and now all of a sudden this place, family, whoever owns it, it looks like the biggest eyesore in the park.
That's like your street
And
at
they-
home,
and
right?
exactly. And suddenly, they decide they're gonna put a new facade on, or they're gonna rent it to somebody, and it's gonna become active again. And it can change the entire look of the block. And Tom has been a big part of that, because he goes out and sells all the neighboring property owners and says, hey, here's the, and we put in an incentive program, we pay, the village will pay 75%, we have 25% for facade improvements. So that shaming, for lack of a better word, works.
If I could jump in, then I have a couple of questions, but along those lines.
I'm not paying for this. Check the bill.
We're also improving empty stores. I just did 3 storefronts owned by one building owner, one of which is occupied, and I said, let's improve the 2 that are not occupied. We'll come back and finish it up when you do have occupancy. He's got a tenant for one of them, and he will soon have a tenant for the other one. So it's an improvement. In addition to that, things like we did in Farmingdale, and the same will happen with Mineola. When a company is looking, when they send out their scoping team to go find a place to locate another, one of their franchises, like That's Meatballs.
Yeah, right.
They look to a place like Farmingdale and say, look at what's going on here. We're going in this direction. People are coming in, and the government is investing back into their location. So this will be the smarter location to occupy. And so you start to bring in better vendors, and that encourages more vendors and then more customers. So it's all a cycle.
And one of the things we've done with the facade program is we've made it available to the tenant as well as the property. Now, a lot of times you don't get the tenants who put money into it, they don't own the property. They're not going to do it. And you get an owner who says, I'm making my money, I'm not going to put money into the facade. By allowing the tenants to do it and paying 75% of it, they now have tremendous incentive, because now they'll put new signs up, they'll put lighting up, they'll put whatever it is. Even though it belongs to the owner at the end of the day, they get the benefit for as long as they're the tenant, and it didn't cost them a fortune.
I was just going to mention the lighting. Like, again, I live in Farmingdale Village, so there's not, like, in Farmingdale, the lighting in the parking lots, and you feel very safe, so safe that it's just, the lighting is
By the way,
amazing.
you have a walkable, viable, vibrant downtown,
Yeah.
there's actually less crime.
Yeah.
It sounds counterintuitive.
More people.
There may be
Yeah.
criminals coming in to prey on
The
those,
lighting,
but the average person going to restaurants, they're there to spend money, they're there to enjoy themselves, they're not there to commit a crime. So,
You said that the tenants are helping to pay for the...
they have the option.
Wow.
If
Do
the
they get any
landlord
tax
doesn't want to
write-offs?
do it, the tenant can invest in the signs and the lighting, whatever.
Are they able to write that off? Do you know
Village
from the
pays
person?
Tax advisor, good, I'm told you.
No, I'm a CFO, so I can just...
They get-
I
they
can go
get-
back to my town and say, look,
What have you
we
sales?
do...
We
They get
do,
increased sales.
No, I understand.
we'll
I just
pay
find that interesting.
75% of it, so their cost is only 25%, and then, yeah, they can write that off as a cost of business.
I live
And
in a
they're more
very
likely to do it
conservative
in
town,
some
they don't
cases
pay
than the
taxes.
owners.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
So it's at the end of the session right now. If anybody wants to stay and continue this conversation, you're more than welcome to do that. I just wanted to let people know in case they need to get to their next session, which starts in about 5 minutes. So thank you so much for coming out today. I hope we answered all of your questions.